In my 38 years on the bench, I've heard every excuse imaginable. But on March 14th, a 24-year-old man walked into my courtroom with a script. He was absolutely convinced those printed pages would set him free. He was wrong. His name was Moses Salman. Young, confident, dressed in a wrinkled suit that looked borrowed from his father's closet. He carried a manila folder stuffed with documents he'd clearly printed from the internet the night before. Moses was facing charges for driving on a suspended license, his third offense in 18 months. The previous 2 judges had shown leniency. They'd given him fines, community service, second chances. I was about to become his third strike. What made Moses different from my usual defendants wasn't the charge. It was his belief system. Moses had discovered something online, something that promised him immunity from the law, something called sovereign citizenship. For those unfamiliar, sovereign citizens believe they've found legal loopholes, magic words, secret phrases that courts must obey. They think the government is a corporation. They believe laws only apply if you consent to them. They're wrong. Every single time. But Moses didn't know that yet. He walked into my courtroom that Tuesday afternoon with absolute certainty. He'd watched the YouTube videos. He'd memorized the scripts. He'd printed the documents. He thought he was prepared. He had no idea what was about to happen. The bailiff called his case at 2:31 p.m., case number 2024T-R4471. The State versus Moses James Salman. Moses stood from the gallery. He didn't walk to the defense table. Instead, he stopped directly in front of my bench. His chin was raised, his shoulders were back. I noticed the folder trembling slightly in his hands. "Mr. Salman," I said, "please approach the podium and state your name for the record." He smiled. That knowing smile I've seen before. The smile of someone who thinks they're smarter than everyone in the room. "I do not consent to being addressed by that corporate fiction," he said. The courtroom went silent. And just like that, I knew exactly what kind of afternoon this was going to be. I've handled sovereign citizens before, perhaps a dozen over my career. But something about Moses felt different. He wasn't just reciting scripts. He genuinely believed every word. "Mr. Salman," I said calmly, "I need you to state your legal name for the court record." He shook his head slowly. "The entity you're referring to is a corporate fiction created by the state. I am Moses, a living man, here under special appearance only." I leaned forward slightly. "Sir, this is a traffic court proceeding. I need your legal name." "I do not recognize the jurisdiction of this admiralty court," he said. He was reading directly from his folder now. "I see the gold fringe on your flag. This is a military tribunal operating under maritime law." The prosecutor, a young woman named Rebecca Torres, looked at me with wide eyes. She'd never seen this before. But I had. "Mr. Salman, the fringe on that flag is decorative. It has no legal significance whatsoever." He smiled again. That infuriating smile. "That's what they trained you to say." I took a breath. "Patience," I reminded myself. "Patience. Let's try this differently," I said. "Are you the person who was driving a silver Honda Civic on January 15th of this year?" "I was traveling," he corrected, "not driving. Driving is a commercial activity. I was exercising my constitutional right to travel freely. On a suspended license. Licenses are contracts," he shot back. "I never consented to that contract. Therefore, it doesn't apply to me." At 2:38 p.m., just 7 minutes into this proceeding, Moses Salman made his first critical mistake. He reached into his folder and pulled out a document. "I'd like to submit this into evidence." I gestured for the bailiff to bring it forward. It was a handwritten letter addressed to the corporate court of Hamilton County. The letter declared Moses a sovereign living man who existed outside federal and state jurisdiction. At the bottom, he'd signed in red ink. Below his signature, he'd pressed his thumbprint. "Sir," I said slowly, "did you write this yourself?" "That is my declaration of sovereignty. It dissolves all contracts between myself and the corporate United States." "Where did you learn this process?" He hesitated for the first time. I did my research. YouTube? His face reddened. There are legal scholars who... Mr. Salmon, there are no legal scholars who support these theories. Not one. Every court in this country has rejected sovereign citizen arguments. Every single time. He shook his head vigorously. Those were corrupt courts. You're supposed to be different. You took an oath. I did take an oath. To uphold the Constitution and the laws of this state. Laws that apply to you. I do not consent. Consent is not required. The courtroom was completely silent now. Every person in the gallery was watching. Some had their phones out, though they knew better. Moses's hands were shaking more visibly now. But he wasn't done. Not even close. But what he said next changed everything. I'm going to ask you a question, Judge. He pronounced my title with obvious contempt, and I need you to answer honestly. Go ahead. Did you take an oath to the Constitution? Or did you take an oath to the Bar Association? I almost laughed. Almost. I took an oath to the Constitution. Then you're bound by that oath. And the Constitution says I have the right to travel. The Ninth Amendment does not say what you think it says. Article 4 does not apply here. The Uniform Commercial Code is not relevant to traffic violations, Mr. Salmon. He was flipping through his folder frantically now. Pages were falling to the floor. His script was failing him. The magic words weren't working. At 2:47 p.m., Moses made his second critical mistake. I am serving you notice, he said loudly. Any action you take against me as a living man is a violation of my rights. I will file a lien against you personally, against your property, against your family. The courtroom gasped. I sat back in my chair. Did you just threaten me? It's not a threat. It's a notice of intent. That is a threat, Mr. Salmon. And you just made it on the record. Something shifted in his eyes. A flicker of doubt. But it disappeared quickly, replaced by more false confidence. You can't do anything to me, he said. I don't recognize your authority. That's not how authority works. I am a free man. You are a citizen of this state who broke a law that exists to protect other people on the road, people who could be hurt by an uninsured, unlicensed driver. Those are corporate regulations designed to extract revenue. Those are laws passed by elected representatives. Laws that apply equally to everyone. Not to me. I paused. Let the silence stretch. Let him hear how absurd those words sounded. Mr. Salmon, do you understand that your license was suspended because you failed to pay previous fines, and that those fines were issued because you were driving without insurance? I don't contract with insurance companies. So if you hit someone, they'd have no recourse, no way to pay their medical bills. Their lost wages. That's not my problem. Would you have shown mercy after that statement? Because I was starting to run out of patience. Actually, I said quietly, it is your problem. That's precisely why we have these laws. Moses shoved his papers back into the folder. His face was flushed. Sweat was visible on his forehead. I'm not getting through to you, he said. You're part of the system. I am the system, Mr. Salmon. And the system is about to make a decision about your future. He laughed. Actually laughed. You can't touch me. I haven't entered joinder with this court. I haven't accepted your jurisdiction. Legally, I'm not even here. You're standing in front of me. My corporate fiction is standing here. The living man is not present. I looked at the bailiff, then back at Moses. So if I hold the living man in contempt, the corporate fiction won't mind? For the first time, genuine fear crossed his face. At 3:02 p.m., Moses made his third and final mistake. You can't hold me in contempt, he said, but his voice cracked. I have not consented to these proceedings. Mr. Salmon, I'm going to give you one final opportunity. You can accept representation from a public defender. You can enter a plea, or you can continue down this path. I don't need a lawyer. Lawyers are officers of the court. They work for you, not for me. They work for justice. There is no justice here. I nodded slowly. I'd given him every chance. more chances than he deserved. Before I reveal what happened next, I want to ask you, would you have made the same call? Let me know in the comments. Mr. Salmon, I said, I've listened to your arguments for over 30 minutes. I've given you multiple opportunities to engage with these proceedings lawfully. I don't recognize. I'm not finished. My voice was firm now. No more patience. You came into this courtroom with a script you found on the internet, a script that has never worked. Not once. Not ever. Not in any court in this country. He opened his mouth. I said, I'm not finished. He closed it. The theories you're citing have been rejected by every level of court. Federal courts, state courts, appellate courts, the Supreme Court. There is not a single case, Mr. Salmon, not one, where sovereign citizen arguments have prevailed. That's because the system is the law, and you are subject to it, whether you consent or not. I let silence fill the courtroom for a long moment. Moses was still standing at the podium. His folder was clutched against his chest like a shield. The shield had failed him. Here is what's going to happen, I said. I'm finding you guilty of driving on a suspended license. This is your third offense. You can't. I am also holding you in contempt of court for your threatening statements regarding personal liens against me and my family. His face went pale. I didn't mean. The record will show exactly what you meant. I looked at the papers in front of me. His history, his previous chances, his complete refusal to accept responsibility. For the traffic violation, I'm sentencing you to 90 days in county jail, the gallery murmured. His mother, sitting in the third row, began to cry. For contempt of court, I'm adding an additional 30 days. Consecutive. You can't do this, Moses shouted. I do not consent. I do not consent. Bailiff. The bailiff moved toward Moses. Moses backed away, bumping into the podium. Don't touch me. I'm a living man. You have no authority over living men. Mr. Salmon, if you resist, I will add additional charges. Is that what you want? He looked at me, then at the bailiff, then at his mother, who was sobbing now. Something broke in him. I've seen it before. That moment when fantasy collides with reality, when the scripts fail, when the magic words don't work, when consequences become real. This isn't right, he said quietly. I was just trying to be free. Freedom comes with responsibility, Mr. Salmon. You wanted the benefits of society without its obligations. That's not freedom. That's entitlement. The bailiff took his arm. Moses didn't resist this time. He let himself be led toward the side door, but he stopped at the threshold, turned back to look at me. The system is rigged, he said. No, Mr. Salmon. The system is fair. You just didn't like the outcome. They led him away. His mother remained in her seat, crying. The prosecutor gathered her files silently. The gallery began to shift, whisper, process what they'd witnessed. Remember when he said he was untouchable, that the law couldn't reach him, that consent was required for consequences? He learned differently that afternoon. I called a 10-minute recess. I needed a moment alone in my chambers. Cases like this always leave me unsettled, not because I question my decision, but because I wonder what failed along the way. What convinced this young man that the law was his enemy, that rules were optional, that consequences could be argued away with the right words? Someone sold him a fantasy. The internet, content creators, false prophets, peddling legal snake oil. And now he was paying the price. Moses Salmon served his full 120 days in county jail. No early release. No good behavior reduction. 6 months after his release, I learned what happened to him through the prosecutor's office. He'd abandoned the sovereign citizen ideology completely. Apparently, 4 months in a cell with real consequences had shattered his belief in magic legal loopholes. He'd gotten his license properly reinstated, purchased actual insurance, paid his outstanding fines. His mother had testified at his sentencing review. She told the court that Moses had fallen down an internet rabbit hole during the pandemic, isolated, anxious, searching for control in a world that felt out of control. The sovereign citizen movement had offered him that illusion, the promise that he was special, that he'd discovered secret knowledge, that the rules didn't apply to him. It was a seductive lie, and he'd believed it completely, until he met a courtroom that didn't play along. I've thought about Moses many times since that afternoon. I don't hate him. I don't even blame him entirely. He was young. He was misled. He was looking for something to believe in. But I also couldn't let him continue unchallenged. Because sovereign citizen ideology isn't just legally wrong. It's dangerous. It leads to confrontations with police. It escalates minor offenses into major incidents. People have been hurt. Officers have been killed. The scripts these people follow aren't harmless quirks. They're recipes for disaster. This case taught me something I'll carry for the rest of my career. There's a difference between challenging unjust laws and denying the existence of law itself. Civil disobedience has a proud history in this country. People have gone to jail for righteous causes. They've accepted consequences in the name of justice. But sovereign citizens aren't civil rights heroes. They're not fighting for a cause larger than themselves. They're simply seeking exemption, personal immunity, the freedom to do whatever they want without accountability. That's not noble. That's not brave. It's just selfishness wrapped in constitutional language. I wonder sometimes if Moses ever thinks about that day, if he remembers standing at my podium, convinced his script would save him, convinced I would fold under the weight of his pseudo-legal arguments. I hope he remembers the lesson. Consequences are real. Authority exists. Society functions because we agree to be bound by rules we didn't individually write. That's not oppression. That's civilization. If this case resonated with you, I share new courtroom stories 3 times a week. These cases matter because they show us what justice looks like in practice. Not perfect, not always comfortable, but necessary. What would you have done in my position? Would you have shown more patience? Less? Let me know in the comments. Next time, I'll tell you about the city councilman who thought his position made him immune to traffic laws. He drove drunk into a school zone. He demanded I call the mayor to vouch for him. He learned the same lesson Moses learned. In my courtroom, everyone is equal under the law. Everyone.